Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the RISD Alumni Photo Affinity Group. This is our lunch series that we kicked off earlier this summer, and every several months we've been planning to keep this lunch series going to bring inspiration into our day, keep the creative juices flowing while we're in lockdown, and also just celebrate all the diverse and incredible work that's being created, whether it's traditional photography or something more experimental, or it's just completely on the forefront of technology and unnamed. So this is really a space to celebrate photo work, and we're so glad that you're here today. A couple of housekeeping notes before we jump off. If you could keep all of your screens muted, that would be great while we're talking. And we have a QA section that will be coming at the end after Anne speaks. So please feel free to add any questions that you may think of, even while she's talking. If you want to just throw some questions in there or notes, we'll take a look at that afterwards and put those questions to Anne herself. Let's see, a couple more notes. If you have any recommendations of people that you want to see that are also photo alumni, please reach out and let us know. That's something that we'll consider as we're curating what that list looks like for 2021. But this is something that we want to keep going, especially while we're in lockdown, to bring us together and just create a space for making and talking about work. I'm photographer and art director Julia Parris, and I run a creative studio called Analog is Heavy, and it has a focus on photography. And what that does is it works with, I work closely with studios and agencies to concept and create photo work for the advertising space, for beauty, for lifestyle, and for tech brands. And it really kind of comes in at the crossroads of art and commerce. So it's kind of taking that fine art background and then applying it to a more commercial space. A nice little mashup there. In addition, I create my own photo-based collage work as personal work and self-publish my own collage zine. I'm super excited to co-host today with Gisel Florez.
Hello, everybody.
Pardon?
Hi.
She's an incredible photographer herself. Gisel runs Gisel Florez Studio and focuses on operating high-end still and motion projects for advertising. She uses a 4x5 camera along with technology, and she creates editorial and independent work for independent and editorial labels. Her love of experimentation through natural elements can be seen throughout her work, incorporating light, water, smoke, and fire to create dynamic compositions full of movement and color. In addition to her work in advertising, Gisel creates personal work grounded in abstraction and movement and technology for virtual reality and blockchain platforms. And you can check out more of her work at giselflorezstudios.com. Gisel and
Just one quick clarification, giselflorez.com.
Oh, sorry, giselflorez.com.
No worries.
Gisel, let me hand this over to you. We're so excited to have Anne today, and Gisel will take it from here. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello. So I am so excited to introduce Anne today. Anne Spalter, I learned about Anne Spalter last winter. I was walking in the neighborhood. This was around when the pandemic just became known that it was overseas at the time. There was an exhibition while we were walking on Kent that was really large, and it had these big balls that were like planets. And I was walking with my family, and everything was very bleak at the time. Everything was very cold, and things were very difficult. As most winters usually kind of are very slow for photography as far as commercial photography. So we were enjoying the day, walking, and saw Anne Spalter's exhibition of vacation planets. And it was a giant installations and in this warehouse building in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And my family had so much fun there. I had a really great time. It was like we were sitting on these chairs and just enjoying, like if it was the middle of the summer on the beach. It had these big globes that had a mix of landscapes, but they were planets and they were like beaches, and we were just like, so I have a really quick screen share if I can. Let's see if I can do this. Let me know if it's working. Can you see that? Can you see this? This is my son right now. And is it sharing? Are you guys seeing it?
We see your inbox header.
Oh, darn, that's weird. Hello. Let's stop that then. Maybe not. I'm gonna try one more time. Let's see, share. Will it work? Yes or no?
Yeah,
you see my son? Okay.
That's great.
This is like in one of the chairs, and then my daughter's like, can you see this one too, or no? Did it switch? Let me see. Let me just open it real quick. And the one I'm sharing. Let's see if this works. Did you see that? Okay. So we had a lot of fun. It was a really a nice time. And so then I found out that she's a RISD alum, and I was like, okay, that's so cool. And I noticed that the planets were a mix. They weren't real planets. They weren't real landscapes, but they were a mix of everything. And I was like, this reminds me of like the artificial intelligence mixing that I had just started seeing appearing in a lot of the blockchain platforms that I was already kind of learning about. I noticed the correlation to the two, but it didn't really come together fully for this event until I saw Anne entered the blockchain art space and had an interview with MOCTA, Museum of Digital Contemporary Art. And then I was so excited because I found out that she started the Spalter collection, and she started the digital art classes at RISD and Brown. So here I am to introduce Anne Spalter. Really wonderful works, and I'm very inspired and interested to hear about her trajectory from when she started in the 1990 with the classes at RISD and Brown. And here we are. So happy to present Anne Spalter.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much, Gisel and Julia and Tue, who's been organizing this behind the scenes. And I'm so glad you enjoyed the exhibit. And I love how your kids had sunglasses on. It makes it look like it was even brighter in there than it was. We actually rented big stage lights to help add to the feeling of warmth and summertime in the winter. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen so you can all see the presentation. Okay, good. And then hopefully you can see my little talking head at the same time. Let me know if you can't. And the team there is going to take all your questions in the chat. So just type them in as you think of them so you don't have to wait and remember them at the end. Anyway, I think we talked about this exhibit already. Just to give you an overview, I'm going to be speaking a little bit about some of the content of my work, what it's about, how I work with the images that I do, and how I got into using the computer to create my work, different ways to display the work, not just on a screen, and then going into some more depth with more and more recent work, which, as Gisel was mentioning, includes work with artificial intelligence, and then most recently getting on blockchain platforms with NFTs, and I'll explain what that all is. I usually talk about my large-scale installations in my talks, but it's been, I don't know, 9 months, I think, since I did one, and during lockdown is not a great time to be doing big installations, so I've mostly been working much smaller scale, but if there are questions about those at the end, I can talk about those. So throughout all the work, and it changes at different media and ways of presenting the work over time. It all consists of a set of, I think, pretty consistent sort of personal iconography and imagery. And things that you'll see over and over and over again are highways, airplanes, airports, sort of modern landscapes with skyscrapers or cruise ships. And recently lighthouses have been somewhat of an obsession and have come and go in the work. And there's often also circular formats and compositions and patterning. And you'll see it come and go with the different media and approaches. And what I hope for in my work is that although the images are sort of personal when they begin, and this is imagery that just appeals to me as an individual, I think a lot of it overlaps with very common dream imagery. I'm obsessed with Carl Jung and the idea of the collective unconscious. So I hope that in addition to meaning something obviously to me because I'm making it, that it can resonate with a larger audience as well and tap into something in the collective unconscious. And then as I was working on this talk, I actually thought, all right, there's the imagery, the icons, and then there's different media and techniques and tools, whether it's charcoal drawing or using the computer. And then there's a whole other category of things that I didn't really find a word for. So if someone has the right word for it, definitely let us know in the chat. I'm calling it visual contexts, different points of view. So I often do aerial points of view, especially when depicting modern landscapes. I think modern points of view from an airplane, from a moving vehicle, are particularly appropriate ways to show the work. Patterning and geometry, which I'm going to talk more about. Times of day, sorry, there's a typo there. Often the color palette, times of day and color themes, I think go together. But when I'm shooting video, I find that there's usually one time of day that's exactly the right time to shoot that scene. And I'll go back many times until I find the perfect kind of moment that has the right feeling and colors in it. And then also working at different scales. Oh, you could have been watching a video this whole time. This was shot, I'll let it play for a minute since I'm stopped. Oops, all right. Doesn't look like it pauses there. That was, just go back. That was a video shot from a helicopter over Dubai. And Dubai is a crazy city. It's like being in a sci-fi novel. And it was really interesting from the ground, but even more so from this aerial perspective. And I was so involved with shooting the video out the window that I didn't realize until later when I got back that because it's very bright there, the desert, the windows were tinted blue. And I couldn't extract out any color. It was just an all blue video. And at first I was dismayed by this, but after I worked with it a while, I thought it actually really fit with the strangeness of the city and this feeling that you were in sort of outer space or underwater, traveling through this strange realm. So how I got involved with the computer, this going back, way, way back, I found this super old picture. I didn't even have a computer in college. I used a typewriter that looked almost exactly like this one. And I didn't use a computer until I was working on my senior thesis. And I was using so much whiteout that friends took pity on me and were like, you know, there's a thing where you could type this in and then press a button and it would all print out. And I was like, wow, I have to learn more about this. But I had started out college at RISD as a painting major. And I really loved painting. I was having a great time there. And bizarrely, I had developed an interest in mathematics, which I'd never had before. I was one of those people that was always in like the lowest level of math class and just scraping by and couldn't understand why I needed to study it, because why would I ever use it? On my senior year in high school, I took a physics course and kind of made math make sense to me. So when I got to college, I thought, oh, I'll just take some math classes. And I took math classes the way most people take art classes, you know, like a little thing on the side. That was just fun. But as you know, if you went to RISD, you have art history credits and English credits and some special studies credits. And after I had taken 2 courses at Brown in math, I ran out of special studies credits. And I went to the then head of the fine arts division and I said, I just need some sort of exception from this rule so that I can continue taking these courses. And somewhat bizarrely to me, even to this day, he said, absolutely not, those are the rules. You can't have any more special studies credits. And I think because I'm an artist, and maybe since you're all artists in the audience, you resonate with this, I really hate being told what to do and that I have to follow the rules. And so I applied to Brown as a transfer student and got in there. And Brown, with the open curriculum, they were like, take whatever classes you want. So that worked out well for me. I actually continued taking painting at Brown and at RISD and other classes at RISD, but pursued a math major at Brown. And when I was graduating, I found out that many of my classmates had been thinking about what they were going to do in their careers throughout the whole 4 years of college. And I had not really thought, what job will I get with a fine art major and a pure math major? And the most common suggestion I got from people was that I could become an actuary, which I had to look up, and it's you work for an insurance company and predict when people will die. So that did not appeal to me as a lifelong career. I kind of panicked, and it was the 80s. Everyone was going into investment banking. I didn't know what investment banking was, but my parents stopped sending me a check, and I interviewed for jobs in banking and ended up working in New York City at Bankers Trust and then at First Boston. And it was actually kind of fun, but I began to miss art more and more. I made more money doing that than I've made pretty much any year since with my artwork, but I was also working like 90 hours a week. So even though I had money, I didn't have time to go to a studio, but I did have a computer on my desk. And I thought, oh, I'm gonna see, maybe I can make some artwork at work while no one's watching me. And I began to put art software on it and make images. And then if my boss came by, I would click and be in Excel and look all studious like I was working, and then go back to the art. And the balance shifted more and more to the point where I thought, well, I really should leave this job before I'm asked to leave and go back to art, which is what I love doing. So I applied to grad school at RISD and got in painting and went back. And I thought, all right, that was fun with the computer. I had to do it. But now I have real studio space, and I'm going to go back to just real artwork. So I stretched up a canvas and I was painting, and I did something. I made some big red mark or something on it that I instantly regretted. And I thought in my mind, undo. So I was so used to being on the computer, and of course nothing happened. But it made me think, wow, there's really a lot of cool things the computer was doing for me. It's such a powerful visual thinking tool. Maybe there's some way I can integrate it with my traditional work. I wanted to take a course on it, and there were no classes. I was discussing that with the head of the painting department, and he said, why don't you teach a class to grad students about the computer and art? And so it was a little bit like the one-eyed leading the blind, and I began teaching this course. And while I was teaching, I was learning the whole time. And those of you who have taught know you really learn something well when you have to teach it. It's a good check on whether you understand what you're doing. And during that time, everyone kept mentioning to me this person named Andy Van Dam, who had helped found the computer science department at Brown and something called the Computer Graphics Research Group, saying I should meet with him and let him know what I was doing. And I was very intimidated by the idea of a computer science department. I had no idea what that would even consist of. And he was also very hard to get a meeting with. I kept calling his secretary, and I would have to book it out like 3 months in advance. But finally I did meet with him. And as soon as I saw his desk, I knew we were going to get along. I thought it would be very like compulsively neat because of computer science, but it wasn't, although he says he knows where everything is on it. And it was the beginning of a long relationship with Brown's computer science department, where I worked for almost 15 years. And while I was there, I began working on a textbook to go with my course because I really didn't find the resources that I needed out there. And while I was doing that, I began interviewing computer artists who had been working for decades that I had never heard of, but had really pioneered the field. And my husband, Michael Spalter, who was an art history major at Brown, said, wow, these people, they're just like every art movement that I've ever studied, like the Impressionists. They're doing this great work. They all know each other, but the academy and the traditional art world hates them and won't show the work at all. And it's really under the radar right now. And we began acquiring some pieces, and let's see if this will link out for me. And we now have one of the largest early computer art collections, private collections that exists. And we put all the work online because we really want people to know about the beginnings of the field and to be able to use our collection as a resource for curation and study. So it's all publicly available at Spalter Digital, if anyone is interested in the early history of computer art. I stayed there in the CS department for quite a long time, and it was really a great job. I thought of interesting projects. I got funding. I was funded through the NSF, through Adobe, Sun Microsystems, did research, hired students, wrote papers, presented at conferences. It wasn't that it was bad, but I really began to miss doing artwork, and it's hard to do your artwork only a few hours a day, sort of on the side. So in 2008, I took a sabbatical and rented a studio space at Hope Artiste Village in Pawtucket, which some of you who spent time in Providence might know of. It was a really great space. And I went in and it was completely just, me and white walls. And I hadn't done artwork full-time and seriously for several years. So I really didn't know if I was going to have any ideas or what would happen. But I started looking through my camera roll on my phone and my digital camera photos. And I found that in addition to pictures of my daughter and family snapshots and vacation and the usual things, I also had hundreds of pictures I took out of the window of my car while I was driving and at airports and weird things that aren't on most people's photo rolls. And I thought, all right, it's the same things that have always occurred in my artwork. And I think you can't escape the imagery and sort of personal things that excite you. They just come back over and over again. So I thought I'll take some of these photos and work with them, and began making drawings. Like this one in the lower right is a big charcoal drawing. It's about 5 feet across, based on a photo I took in Sedona of the highway in the winter. And I drew a lot of clouds and things. It was all based on photos. Like you see on the left, there's a photo of a swimming pool. I have a lot of photos of swimming pools and artwork based on water, pools and waves and things. I did a pastel drawing of it. And around this time in 2012, I was invited to Dubai with Michael, and we were invited by the government. And after a while, we realized that they were paying for us to go. And he said, oh, this is incredibly generous of them. And I'm so thankful. I promised them a gift of your artwork. And I was like, oh, that's nice of you that you promised that. What am I going to give them? And he said, I don't know, just take something off the wall of your studio. It will be great. But I looked and I realized, because I was working from photographs, all the work was very Western with, perspective and representational in a certain type of photographic space that didn't seem relevant to me for art in the Middle East. And I had taken an Islamic art course at Brown and really loved Islamic art and the patterning. So I scanned in the pastel drawing that you see here and began experimenting with patterning it on the computer and started using these kaleidoscopic patterns. And I gave a whole portfolio of prints to their Ministry of Culture. And the head of that loved them, was very excited about it, actually got me on TV in Dubai, and it got me really excited about working this way. When I came back, a friend came to my studio and said, I like the patterns, they're very beautiful, but I feel like you've lost some of the sense of motion that was in your original drawings because of the way the marks were made. And now they're all kind of chopped up inside the pattern. So I thought maybe if I could do patterning but use a video, I would get the best of both worlds, have the patterning and the sense of motion. Gotta remember to click on these videos at the same time. So this, you can see Narragansett Electric there. I think it's now National Grid in the distance. And one of the first cameras that I used, which was, I think, $100 little Sony thing. And basically every few years I've upgraded to more and more sophisticated cameras. But ironically, my last one, you know, cost thousands of dollars and has special lenses and whatever. It then started moving in the other direction. And I now use almost exclusively my iPhone. I have the 11 Pro Max one, and the image quality is really fantastic. And it shoots 4K video at 60 frames a second, even in low light conditions. So it's sort of going back in the other direction. But I really liked the video, the way it sort of brought out different things that I didn't see in the original footage. So I began shooting video thinking I would kaleidoscopic later on, and just using plugins in After Effects, an off-the-shelf plugin. And then I later worked with a programmer to have a custom plugin so I could really control more parameters of the patterning. And I became obsessed, as I mentioned at the beginning, with, especially when I started using video instead of just photos, the exact time of day and light conditions and color. So to do the one that I'm showing here, I had to wake up at 6 in the morning to see the sunrise in Manhattan, which for people who know me, that is not my time of day. So that was my big sacrifice for my artwork. I had a show of these that went really well, and it was all videos on screens. And most of them, I think all of them actually, were horizontal. And it kind of looked like a bunch of TVs, and that was something that I wanted to then get away from. Just a note about patterning. I was just looking today at some of these and thinking about how the icons, hopefully, to me, are resonating with sort of images in the collective unconscious. And then I've always thought of patterning as having a spiritual aspect, and like Islamic artwork, the patterning is supposed to show the order of the universe and something greater than ourselves. But there's also this whole crazy field called cymatics, where people study waves and patterns made by sound. So this is a guy putting couscous, it's often sand, but he used couscous, on a plate and then vibrating it with a violin bow and making these beautiful patterns. So I think that patterning it taps into something universal about nature and mathematics. And I put some links in here. These are really cool for people who have interest in that. So most of my work at this point was files that you would have to look at on a screen or have projected. And I felt like it always was making reference back to television. And even when people bought it, they're like, oh, this is great, I can show this on my TV. And I didn't really want people to show my art on their TV. I didn't want it to be like a screensaver. So I began to look at other ways of presenting the work. So this is a coffee table, and it has a video on it. And although I ended up selling this, I got a lot of negative feedback about it being design and not artwork, because it was a functional table. It has tempered glass on top, and you can use it as a coffee table. Ironically, it's literally exactly the same screen and file that I showed in fine art galleries, but instead of being on the wall, it was flat. So it was interesting kind of conceptually, but frustrating to me, because I felt like it was as much fine art as anything else I had ever done. Another thing that we've explored is little sculptures, so that people don't have to feel that they're collecting video artwork. This is also a video, yes. Even now, it's a pretty limited audience of collectors who collect new media and even video artwork. But something that was small and handheld and battery powered enabled me to find a much wider audience for my work. And we began this process actually pouring resin directly over a battery powered screen. There were pros and cons to that. I can talk more about resin if anyone's interested in that later, but I ended up working with a prototyping company in Rhode Island that had done a lot of work for Hasbro. And they made this 2-part mold of acrylic that's then hand polished, and an injection molded part on the back for the port. And it works just with a regular USB cable. And I also use those little screens to make video prints, where it was printed material, the screen's behind it, and then the center is moving. and I did these framed and also just on plexi, actually back printed onto plexiglass, and with the screen behind it for a more modern look. You can see in the lower right, you can kind of see the screen in the back and how the whole thing is put together. And a nice thing about this form factor was that it had video and it was moving, but it wasn't as kind of physiologically exhausting as seeing a whole screen filled with video. So this is a large scale one. And this is actually up in my apartment in Brooklyn, and I leave it on all the time. Whereas even my own artwork or work that I really love of other people can only be up on a big screen for me for a little while before it's actually super annoying, because the brightness and the motion, your eye is constantly drawn to it, and it just becomes exhausting after a while. So I think while that works really well in an institutional setting, in a museum, and a lobby of a big building, it's not great if it's in your living room with you. So this, because the video part is smaller, somehow it doesn't work the same way with the eye and brain, and I can leave it on all the time. Just some other videos, more kaleidoscopic patterning, and we're hearing sound of a show, ways of making kind of a whole world out of a straight shot of one scene. This is some more large scale video prints in the lobby of the building, which I was renting at the time. Gisel's in Williamsburg, so she might recognize Northside Piers. And then, so I kept working with this concept. I can start all these up at once. It was very expensive to make the video gems because of the way they were manufactured, and the acrylic had to be hand polished, each one individually. So the price point had to be pretty high to sell them. In these, because it's just a rectangle and it's done with a company that mass produces these, I was able to make things much more easily. I didn't have to be involved with the production process, and it brought the price down an enormous amount. So I'm going to show you one of these at the end of the talk. But again, it doesn't look like a television set, and it lets people collect this type of artwork who don't think of themselves as new media and video collectors. AI. So it was so interesting, Gisel, that you thought that the spheres had used AI, because I wasn't using it yet, but it does kind of look like that, and the way my art started to look when I began using some artificial intelligence. So I had heard about AI and started to see artwork created with it, and I thought it was very interesting, but I didn't want to learn how to program it myself, and I wasn't working with anyone who was doing this type of programming, so I kind of stayed on the sidelines. And then an artist friend of mine posted that she was using something called Playform, where you didn't need to know how to program anything. So it's a no-code environment, and you could play around with artificial intelligence. So I thought, this is great. I'm going to try this out. You know what? I think I already have a page of this loaded up here. Just go into it. So this is the website, and anyone can go use this. The pricing is pretty low. Some of the things are actually free that you can use in it. And this was one of my first projects. And this type of AI algorithm uses 2 image sets, and it starts with an inspiration, or image set number 1, and it keeps changing it over and over again to try to make the pictures look more like the images in set number 2. So it's kind of trying to change these images, which are all my own artwork off my Instagram feed, into images that look like these airplane photos, which I just took off the web. So you can see when it starts out, it's kind of circular, like the images that it began with. And then you begin to see a little bit more of the forms of the planes in there, and the coloring, because in the end it takes all the coloring from the second set. And these to me, fascinating compositions began to emerge. And I kind of thought of it like another point of view. So you have sort of, medieval perspective where everything's sort of conceptual, you have 3D perspective, and now you had this perspective of the computer where it was seeing things in a way differently from the way people see them and making up its own ideas about what the images should look like. And I thought many of them were things that I would have been happy to have come up with on my own if I were working. So it's just new compositions. But as you can see, they're very low resolution, but kind of fascinating. So I tried different ways of scaling up the pictures, but none of them made the imagery of a quality where I could print it or use it as the final output. So I actually went back to my RISD training and thought, okay, I'm going to render it, but not on the computer. I'm going to do it by hand. And I began making pastel drawings based on those images like the ones I just showed. And that was really fun. And it was also kind of creepy because I felt like I was working with someone else who was giving me ideas and we were going back and forth. This is just a blow up. So you can see the little fuzzy picture. And then I tried to keep to the composition that the computer gave me, but then add in things that I thought brought it up to a level where I was happy with it as a piece of artwork. Around that time, which was almost a year ago, actually November 2019, I got a residency at Mass MoCA and access to real studio space, which was the first time I had had that type of space since Hope Artiste Village. I work out of my apartment in Brooklyn, so I don't, for instance, oil paint in my apartment, but I thought this is a good opportunity for me to get back to my painting roots. And I printed out a bunch of these fuzzy things. So that's what you see in the lower right. And they were kind of big and pixelated. And then I sized the paper with acrylic gel and just painted over it with oil paint. And made a whole bunch of these little 10 by 10 images and a few that were bigger. So just some examples. And I ended up using those in an installation in the Spring Break Art Fair in New York City last March. And this was just as everything was closing down. It was the last public event that I've done. So in this little space, even there, I was greeting people with the elbow bump instead of handshaking. And the chalk lines that we drew on the wall are meant to represent kind of the space of the computer, the point of view and mind of the computer. That was Spring Break, New York. And it's an art fair that now it has two parts. There's also Spring Break, LA. And it's a pretty competitive fair. So I didn't know if I would get in. And I thought I would better my odds by applying to both fairs. And to my surprise and enjoyment, I got into both. But then I had to produce work for both. So I already had these paintings and did those in New York. And the theme of the fairs was excess, which, as you could kind of see, and I'll show you more, the AI algorithms create a lot of images, a kind of overwhelming number of images. So the New York show was about the number of images and how excessive that was. And the LA one, I thought instead of one little image, I'm gonna make one gigantic thing. So I wanted to make it a large inflatable, and I had done these inflatable spheres, but I wanted to make one based on one of these AI shapes. So it started with the little fuzzy thing you see on the far left. Then I made a pastel drawing. Then I worked with an awesome RISD student to do a 3D model. We rendered it sort of glass-like. And I only found out I got into the fair like maybe 3 weeks, not even, maybe that long, right before. And I had it made, the shape, because it was expensive. I didn't want to produce it if I wasn't going to get in. So in a panic, we began calling, and my usual inflation people who did the spheres said they could not produce this in time. So we began calling places on the West Coast near LA to see if they could make it. We called 14 places, 12 said, "Are you out of your mind?" And 2 said they could do it. One was pretty reasonably priced, and the other was very extremely not reasonably priced. So I went with the reasonable one, but I was talking to the people who were more expensive, and they did inflatables for Jeff Koons and other people who have a little bigger budgets than I do. And they said, we don't know what you're going to get for that lower price. Make sure to ask them for a rendering before you commit. So late one night, I got the picture that you see on the right, which does not look to me anything like the other shape. I was up almost all night thinking I'm going to have to pull out of this art fair because I've now missed the deadline with the expensive people, and there's no way I'm presenting anything that looks like that. But in the morning, I called the more expensive people back and said, please take my money, and please, can you do this? And they miraculously made this shape in about 10 days. It was really extraordinary. Shipped it directly to my hotel in LA. And the first time I saw it was when we inflated it at the art fair. And the videos in the back are all made from frames from AI, algorithm iterations. This book I showed at both installations, and it has little printouts of all of those images that you were seeing from Playform. It's a 400-page book, and it only had half of the images that the algorithm created. And printed small, they kind of look okay. They just weren't good printed big. I went on to use another algorithm in Playform called Freeform, and this made images that were higher resolution, 1024 instead of 256 pixels. I put in cruise ships, an image set of cruise ships, yachts, container ships, and boats on fire, and then took frames of the iterations and put them into After Effects and worked with them to make a video. And showed these at, so by this time everything was going virtual. The CADAF Art Fair, Contemporary and Digital Art Fair, was virtual this year. And I showed these there. So I really liked the weird sense of motion of the computer, kind of trying to think about the imagery and make what it thought would be the proper ending image. And I keyed out a bunch of it, and the colors behind were also AI-based colors with an input set of just colors that I liked, and then it created a bunch of new colors, and I made those into a video behind it. So I was working with all this AI stuff and kept hearing about crypto art and art on the blockchain. And when I had looked at it very superficially, I thought a lot of it didn't even seem like art to me, but I began to see more and more real artists on the site creating things that I thought were very interesting, and I thought I should try this out. And I wanted to do it with images that were a little bit higher resolution. So I began working with another, I already have this up, another cool thing, which you should all check out if you're interested in making this type of artwork, called Night Cafe. And if you just type Night Cafe Studio into Google, you'll get it. And delightfully, with this one, you don't need a whole image set. It actually takes a long time to put together a set of even 30 images, never mind 100 or 300, some of these require. This you could use as few as 2 images. So that colorful palm tree, I had a photograph I took on vacation, previous artwork I had made, and a pastel drawing I had done. And those mushed together made this image. So I was really excited about this, and I thought a great place to sell those, because the art world was kind of closed down, and I had been looking into ways of selling art online and reaching people online, would be to look at selling it on the blockchain. This is just another example from Night Cafe. It was a picture of a lighthouse that I found online and a photo I took of palm trees. And there's only a few parameters you can adjust, but I thought it gave really cool results. And then I gave a talk about collecting NFTs, non-fungible tokens, which just means things that are not interchangeable. So if you have Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency, one Bitcoin is interchangeable with any other Bitcoin, and a non-fungible token like an artwork, it's not interchangeable for any other artwork. It's a unique token that's kept track of on the blockchain, which is just a big list of transactions and events that's distributed on the web so that it's very secure. And I began putting things up on a site called Super Rare. And it was really fun. It was fun to put artwork out where a huge audience of people could see it and bid on it. You can set a price or people can bid on it. And then it keeps track, because it's on the blockchain, of everything that happens with your artwork. So you can see on the bottom of this picture, you can see when it's created. Maybe I left that out of the screen grab. You do see when it's created, you see people that placed bids, you see who purchased it, if it changes hands, you see everyone who has owned it. So the provenance is incredibly clear. And if it's resold, you get 10% of the resale value, unlike traditional art auctions. So I think it's a whole fascinating new area for artists to look into. Maybe particularly relevant for photography because it works really well with photographic images, as opposed to, I think, say, taking a photograph of a painting and putting it on there. It's also great if you're animating or doing something that's only possible online. I think can be particularly appropriate with it. It's a little complicated getting set up to do it, but some of the sites are much easier. With Super Rare, you have to buy everything with Ethereum, a cryptocurrency, but other ones you can just put in your credit card and buy artwork. I think for especially younger people today, that if you're living in an apartment or you're moving around a lot, you don't really want a lot of physical things with you. It's great to have everything online. Some of the downsides, and this actually happened to me a year or so ago, I had looked into it and I bought a piece of crypto artwork, and I then forgot the password for my Ethereum wallet, and it's gone. Like, I don't have it anymore. Technically I own it, but I have no access to it, and no one can help you get back your password. So that's something that doesn't exist in the traditional art world and is a little scary, and hopefully that they will address. Also, the valuations are hard to ascertain. There's things that I don't think should be worth anything that are selling for tens of thousands of dollars, and some amazing artwork that's very inexpensive. So it's a great area, I think, for collectors to look into, because there's a lot of wonderful opportunities. And of course, you need a screen to see the artworks. So there's pros and cons to it, but I think it's an exciting thing to be looking into. This is just some of the different marketplaces that are out there. On this one called Super Rare, as is Gisel, her beautiful artwork. There's also one called Wearable. And I think on that one, you don't have to apply. You can just put up your artwork. There are some that are sort of a place where anything tokenized anywhere can be bought and sold, like OpenSea. So it has millions of things on it. Known Origin is another one. And just to show this is impacting the traditional art world, some museums have begun collecting this, and Christie's auctioned off a work. It went for over $100,000. It had a physical part to it, but also an NFT with it. So it's getting into the radar of the traditional art world. And I'm gonna wrap up the presentation part with that. I'm going to show you some artwork, and I guess before I do that, just if anyone wants to contact me, I'm super easy to find online. It's all just Anne Spalter, and this is recorded, and they have the presentation if anyone wants that contact info. But I wanted to show you, since I have one here, the video print. I might have to turn off my fake background. See if I can get it to come in to the camera. Hold on, I'm just going to turn off the background. It's like a little blown out because of the Zoom camera, but You can see the sphere going, and it's just like pretty thin plexiglass. It has a certificate on the back that's signed, and it just plugs in to with a little magnetic plug to run it. Oh, that's like a little better, maybe further. Oh, here, further back, it looks better. You can see it better. And then there's so many ways now to print things online. So I have a big high-end Epson printer that I use for archival prints and things. But I also recently, and I thought this could be a good thing to go along with, some people with the NFTs also give the buyers a print or some sort of tangible thing. And I made these a place called Mixed Tiles, but a bunch of companies do it. But the printing quality is actually super good. I was amazed. So I think, you know, once you have that digital file, you can show things on a screen, you can put things in a sculptural format, you can have them on a crypto art thing, you can print them out. There's just 2 o'clock and I don't have time.
That's amazing. There are so many wonderful correlations to RISD and everybody who's been in photography or any kind of fine art. I'm sure this will resonate with all creators. You have such a deep background in these things. I'm so impressed. I had no idea this kind of all of this stuff.
I'm old.
Oh my God. So there's like so many things, that everything from like Brown University to the way you worked there to the cymatics, like there's a lot of crazy correlations between your work and what I love. So it's like,
yeah, well, your work is beautiful and I love the light and color in it.
Thank you. The video mandalas in a way that you're creating is like, they blew me away. I mean, the detail quality is incredible. I don't think I've ever experienced something like those before. Wow, the little gems of the video. Anyways, so let's take some questions. I don't even know if I have questions, but the crypto art and the blockchain world that you spoke of, it has developed so much. The last interview where I spoke about my journey through crypto art on our last lunch presentation, since then it has developed so much, like with the Christie's and the different platforms that have sprung out since then. I think I mentioned Super Rare on the last one. I mean, it's like everything is growing so fast in that space. Like every day there's a new thing. On Twitter, there's a lot of communication with crypto art. So if anybody wants to find out about crypto art, you can find a lot of connections through Twitter. The 10% commission is a huge thing for artists coming from anywhere. I mean, it automatically with the smart contract, it goes straight to the wallets assigned. So there's no question as to if you'll get payment or things like that. It's a wonderful experience. It's something that the community of artists actually have held on to, because I was part of that scene of artists having to put their foot down, because right away the commissions were changed at one point with Super Rare, and we all came together, we band together, and we made sure that they continued at the 10%. That's something that should move on for the art world in the future indefinitely, I hope. So it's up to us to make sure that continues.
Yeah, it's very instant gratification. So unlike selling a work of art to a gallery where you don't know when you're going to get paid or if you're ever going to be paid, it's instantaneous, and you see it in your cryptocurrency wallet, and it's very nice. Wake up in the morning and have more money in there. Like, it's a great
it's
feeling.
Wild. And even if you're collecting other people's work and you put it for sale, like randomly will get bought, and it's a wild thing, experience. Also, but then there's the positive things and the negative things, which you mentioned as well, of losing your keys, and that's another really important thing to be really, really careful when you're starting is every single place every marketplace or a blockchain website you're going to enter is going to either try to make you a new wallet, which will give you a seed phrase. And that seed phrase is like 10 to 20 words that you have to remember in order. You would write them down, hopefully not on your computer, because there's easy ways for people to access and find them on your computer. If you copy paste, if you screenshot, don't do any of it. Yeah, I know. So write it down and actually keep it in places where you have your most important information in a few different places so that you never lose it. That is the responsibility of the collectors now too. And now that everybody can be a collector, everybody should be responsible as collectors too, and keeping your assets safe by storing these seed phrases always carefully. And and also be careful not to make too many wallets at first. It's like there's a lot of sites where you can actually link the same wallet. So like, you could either try to find how to use your same wallet as an artist. It's actually customary to keep one address for the artist to tokenize with, because that's the one way we can be for sure that it's from the original artist itself. That's like the only way to really be sure if the token was created by that artist, is like the address of the wallet that you are tokenizing with. It's wild until you kind of delve into it and you know more, but if you come back to these notes, they're very important.
Unmute. The first time you do it, it's so confusing,
Yeah.
but after you go through the process, it makes a lot more sense.
Are there any questions from others? You answered all my questions that I had ahead of time, so Julia, do you have any questions?
With a question. Yeah, I'll jump in with a question. I love how experimentation and curiosity seems to drive your work from the very beginning. And I'm wondering, in between large projects that you've been working on, what does that experimentation and whether it's with materials or with color or with subject matter, what does playtime look for you that kind of, would maybe evolve into a project down the road? But what does that look like when you're in between and you're gathering ideas and you're exploring?
That's a great question, thanks. I think I love that. Some things are just responses to a call for projects or an application, or then when you get it, going to the site and doing something. And that's sort of one type of process. And it does produce new ideas, because whatever you think you're going to do, when you get there and start doing it, it always changes and is way more challenging than you thought it was going to be, and is often quite a dramatic experience. For those of you who do large installations will know this. But for smaller things, or when I'm working in a more free-form way, it's just kind of following random threads around. So with the AI, thinking, oh, it would be fun just to experiment with this. I'm just going to put in images of stuff that appeal to me. I'm going to see what happens. I got those fuzzy things. I ended up making oil paintings. It became an installation. So it's just kind of following from one thing to the other, but without really knowing where it's going to lead.
I love how even your AI generated work is so painterly. I mean, you can see your painting background throughout your color work, throughout the movement, even the compositions that you choose to move forward from, from the AI generated work. I mean, I think that's really incredible, and kind of reminds me how a multidiscipline background actually is such a strength for artists today. That I don't know many people that are just purist and only working in one discipline, but the materiality and the exploration of multiple different approaches to image making, I think that's really beautiful to see through your work.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's rare now to just work in one area, and that many artists get quite expert at a bunch of different media and different approaches. And it's always your artwork, and your content. I think that is going to come through no matter what you're using, but people are more open to shifting back and forth. And I do feel like with the video, I kind of feel like I'm painting. It's, it's colors, it's composition, it's all those things that I learned that they do translate across media. And I'm a really bad photographer. So it's a source of inspiration, because when I use the photographs that I take, they're never good as they are. They always need something to happen with them. And one of the works was actually in here with the dredging machine with the kaleidoscopic, was a collaboration with a filmmaker. And her footage was so great. I just felt like anything I do to it, it's not really going to improve it at all or do anything better to it. It was actually hard to work with it because it was so good. So the fact that I don't know what I'm doing with video and photography, I think helps me go to the next stage where it becomes more painterly or processed and manipulated on the computer.
I think that's actually what makes those artificial intelligence pieces so strong, especially the really high-res detailed ones that you had there. You can really see the brush strokes being highlighted on the ones you chose. I'm sure that was something that you saw in them. It's like to have the cold, hard, angles and a rigidity of digital media and computers and numbers, and with a painterly emotion, detail work is like incredible to see together. Okay, there's one question here that sounds interesting that I was curious. Misha here with, what happens if galleries tokenize your artwork? Has that happened yet? Because you all maybe had a gallery representation, or no? You tell us.
I have had gallery representations, but I don't believe that a gallery has the right to tokenize your artwork. I think that would be a big issue. It might not stop them, but I don't think they have the right to do that, just in terms of like intellectual property rights.
That makes sense. Definitely without permission. I think there's a platform that just started specifically for video and photography called the Ephemera. And they are doing something. They are the first platform to do something like this, where they are they are inviting the gallery to tokenize for the artists that do not understand blockchain or are part of it. So they're going to be the pioneers of this kind of like collaborative tokenization for artists that are not technically savvy to get there themselves. So we'll see. I don't know for sure either on how that's going to be working out for artists that are very established already with their galleries, like permission of selling independently. We are the artists, so we should have control over our things no matter what.
Yeah, I think it's nice, especially for people who are not represented by a gallery. It gives you a place to sell your artwork where there isn't any stigma to selling the art online, which sometimes there is with fine artwork. And I'm always told, like, don't sell artwork directly from your website, and the whole just, weirdness of the art world and its different protocols and lack of transparency. And the crypto art world addresses some of those, I think, in a really positive way.
All right, anything else?
Well, this is incredible. Are there any final questions before we wrap it up for today? This is, wow, I'm so inspired.
Yeah. And if anyone thinks of something later on, feel free to just email me.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Anne. This has been truly a joy, a bright point, and a very dreary day in New York. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. And thank you for inspiring us. It's truly a gift today. So thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to RISD for supporting the alumni photo affinity group. And please be in touch, everyone. Until next time.
Thank you.